I think a lot of guys, they get kind of intimidated when it comes to pig hunting with a bolt gun. Well, I'm telling you right now, this is a lot of fun. I know all the AR guys out there are probably screaming, you gotta have an AR to kill pigs and have fun. Well, that's not necessarily true, because we're out here having a blast. Any way you slice it, you don't have to shoot 25 times to go have a good time.
Heat of the moment, man, it's hard to make that adjustment in your mind. As a shooter, it helps so much not have to even think about it. The reason that I really like this scope right here because it sets so low to the barrel, so whenever you're shooting, you don't want to have to think about the scope differential. Low as this thing right here is, you should be able to stick it on them and whack them. You shouldn't even have to think about it.
Who's your daddy?
You know, the longer I play this incredible game, the more I realize when it comes to equipment, there's really only two different categories most night hunters fall into. You're either A, someone who puts your faith in keeping it simple, because you know simple's got it done for you in the past, or type B, someone who says the heck with simple and always looking for ways to add more equipment to their process. Well, today is all about keeping it simple, as Night Crew team member Ronnie O'Neill has finally got a chance to recreate an old workhorse of a bolt-action rifle that never let us down not once in over 15 years. That old rifle was such a killer, we simply didn't have the heart to separate the gun from the scope when we switched to thermal. So the decision was made to do a build just like her, a 2.0 if you will. You see, besides the fact her kills numbered into the thousands, there's a reason we could always count on her in a crunch. It didn't matter where they were at, as long as they were under 200 yards. You put the crosshair on them and pull the trigger. 5 yards or 250 yards, it did not matter. She would put them in the dirt. Well, you might ask, how's that possible? Well, it's actually pretty simple. She was a 243, one of the flattest calibers ever made, and she had an extremely low scope differential, meaning her scope nearly touched the barrel, literally. And to recreate that same setup, we needed a special thermal that caters to guys like us, the bolt guy. Our biggest drawback to traditional thermals on a bolt action is there's no real good way to get them close to the barrel. Well, thanks to this new option, a bolt guy can now choose how high or low he wants his scope to sit. And for us, that's a welcome option, as it allows us to sight in at the range we prefer to kill the animal, with minimal elevation variance downrange. I've always thought you should sight your rifle in at the range you want to kill them. Well, that doesn't exclude extremely close. Anyone who's followed Night Crew for a long period of time knows we like to get them in our lap, as it just makes for good TV. And the last thing we want to be thinking about in the heat of the moment when one's staring us down at 20 yards is how high do I need to hold my reticle? That's the last thing we want to be thinking about. Here's how scope differential works. If you're zeroed at 100 yards with, say, a 3-inch scope differential, that really becomes a factor on one this close. The reality is you'll always hit low in that scenario if you don't make an adjustment and hold high on the fly. Talk about counterintuitive. You really have to know your rifle to hold 2 to 3 inches high on one standing there at 20 yards. That's why we prefer a naturally flat caliber with as low a scope differential as possible. Not because we like to shoot them far, but because we like to shoot them close.
Good, bro. Hit a kill. Man, the reason that I really like this scope right here, because it sets so low to the barrel that your scope differential is right on the barrel, so you're not having to think so much on your shots. Because we've had situations before where a scope is set up so high that your bullet changes, you know, so much that I've screwed up before, not held where I was supposed to hold, just because there's a difference, there's a huge difference. So with this right here, I feel like you're gonna have so much more peace of mind because you know your scope's down there and you shouldn't have to make that many adjustments. That sucker's dead on at 50, 55 yards, so a lot of people don't understand why we would sight our rifles in at 50 yards or 60 yards instead of 100 yards, but for what we do, we want the animals between 0 and 50 yards, so we want to know when we pull the trigger that that gun is dead on at the range that we want to kill them at. So whenever we're filming, we're trying to get the animal, you know, as close as possible. So whenever you're shooting, you don't want to have to think about the scope differential. You just want to be able to stick it on them and pull the trigger, not to think about how we have been shooting with the scope being 2.5, 3 inches up off the barrel or whatever it is. In the heat of the moment, man, it's hard to make that adjustment in your mind. In your mind, you want to stick the crosshair on them and you want to kill them. You don't want to have to be thinking about where your crosshair is, high, low, or whatnot. And I think this right here will be the answer to that problem. We will kill them out there at 100, 150, 200 yards, but that's not what our purpose is for. So we want to know when they're between that 0 and 50 yards, there's no thinking about it, no nothing. You just put the crosshair on them and pull the trigger. So that's the reason why we sight our rifles in at that distance. But
Game over, buddy.
so if anybody's watched the show for any period amount of time, we had an old Remington 700 243 with the regular Leopold scope on it. Well, that thing was a killer. Like I was saying earlier, you didn't have to think nothing about it. You put the crosshair on them, you pull the trigger, and they were gonna die. Well, I got to thinking one day, when we went to thermal scopes, got away from the traditional scope, I was like, man, that gun has killed so many animals. How do you separate the gun and the scope? So he's like, you know what, that gun's like peanut butter and jelly. The scope and the rifle goes together so well, you can't separate them. This right here should be almost set up exactly like PB&J. I mean, it's the same concept. So hopefully this will be PB&J part 2. PB&J was a killer, man. I don't know how many coyotes and bobcats and stuff that gun's killed, but it's been a lot.
Ronnie spent so much time behind PB&J, it's hard for him not to compare all the others against her. He says if that setup worked before, there's no reason this shouldn't also. Because of her low scope differential, PB&J took holdover under 200 yards completely out of the equation and allowed him to concentrate on nothing but killing.
It didn't matter if the animals were at 5 yards or 300 yards. You stuck the crosshair on them, you pulled the trigger, and you killed them. As low as this thing right here is, you should be able to stick it on them and whack them. You shouldn't even have to think about it.
everything changes when things are going down, and you only have a few seconds to make decisions. And second guessing where you need to hold at that moment is a burden that can almost completely be eliminated with the right setup. And for Ronnie, there's comfort in knowing that's one less thing he's got to worry about when it matters.
In the heat of the moment, man, it's hard to make that adjustment in your mind. As a shooter, it helps so much not have to even think about it. So just stick the crosshair on, pull the trigger, and whack them. That's my hope. Yeah, there's a big old pig. Yeah, get out, man. That's a big old pig, dude. I said I didn't bring my light, but I think I hit him right below the ear, right where I was aiming. We talked about the other day, if we sight our guns in at 50 yards for a reason. Well, that right there shows you why. Can you see that split? Dropped him like a sack of taters. Me and Chris was talking earlier about most of the time anybody that is a die-hard bolt guy, they want a one shot, one kill. They're concerned about accuracy. But guys that want to concentrate on accuracy, just like you would just a regular daytime scope run out on your bolt gun, this thermal here is going to be the way to go.
The bolt comes in a 384 or 640 resolution thermal detector, 12 micron pixel pitch with a 35mm manual focus f1.1 lens. And all that performance feeds into a crystal clear LCOS display, guaranteeing nothing gets left behind, at least if you can shoot anyway. The bolt also features a traditional 30mm design, allowing the bolt action enthusiast unlimited mounting options for his or her favorite rifle. And on top of the bolt, the controller turret provides both audible and tactile feedback for ease of use in the dark. And never worry about power again with a potential 12-hour runtime. The bolt may be simple, but still packs one heck of a punch. We've all seen that commercial that says, "So easy a caveman could do it." Well, I wouldn't call Ronnie a caveman, but let's just say he doesn't go out of his way to complicate much of anything.
Something I try to live by, it's called KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. I mean, you cannot mess this up. If I can use this scope, anybody can use this scope. Hey. You know, for guys that consider themselves bolt guys, there's a reason why this scope is called the bolt. If you have a bolt action rifle and you like their scopes to set down low to your barrel, this is going to be the answer to your problem on a thermal scope. And this scope is super, super easy to use. There's no way anybody couldn't figure this thing out. I would say if there's a user-friendly one, this one right here is it. Chris makes fun of me all the time for playing the flute on certain scopes because there's so many buttons up top, which is a good feature. You know, they're all at different levels to where you know what you're pushing, but sometimes I get a little carried away. I'll turn something off or resight the scope in on accident or something, and I get made fun of. But man, this one right here is, I don't know how you can mess it up. Like I said, if I can't mess it up, nobody can mess it up, so.
I really feel like there's something to be said about sticking with whatever you've proven to yourself works, and in turn giving you confidence as a result of that success. For some guys, that may be a certain type of AR and a certain caliber. And for others, you never know. That may just be Grandpa's old deer rifle because it's all they had. The bottom line is, using what gives you the most confidence and having fun is what really matters at the end of the day. What truly impresses me is not killing 100 pigs in a night. That's great and all, but what really impresses me is the guy that can go out with all that he has and still have a good time. And that may only be a pump shotgun and a flashlight, but if it's all you got and can go have fun, who cares? It seems we've somehow reached a point where our hunts are measured by how many did we kill. But that's not what night hunting's about. At least it's not to me. It's about enjoying the sport we love with friends, no matter what we kill or how we go about it. Big numbers mean nothing to me. I want to know if you had a good time. We hear guys bragging all the time. Well, we killed 97 last night. Kind of like it's a contest. Who cares? I had just as much fun shooting this one little pig in the face.
3 for 3. Man, I like it. That thing can't be a 1/4 inch off the top of the barrel. It's just like our old rifle. It's pretty dang clear for a 384 too. That's what's surprising to me is, you know, most 384 units, you start zooming out. If you get out there past 100, they're just a blob. But this one's still pretty dang clear. I'm liking it. Let's keep whacking them. InfiRay USA, it's where it's at. Anyone thinking otherwise, they just don't know what the hell they're talking about. I think a lot of guys, they get kind of intimidated when it comes to pig hunting with a bolt gun. I'm telling you right now, this is a lot of fun. I know all the AR guys out there are probably screaming, you gotta have an AR to kill pigs and have fun. Well, that's not necessarily true because we're out here having a blast. Any way you slice it, you don't have to shoot 25 times to go have a good time. Who's your daddy? Whee! That was intense. I don't know how far he is, but I had to wait on him to turn around. Yeah, he kept facing me forever, and I had to just kind of wait and just let him get his back to me to get a little closer. Anybody that thinks that crap right there ain't fun, there's something wrong with them. Who's your daddy? That thing is putting them down.
So like I said earlier, changing your colors on this thing is super easy. It's the button over here on the far left, has a P on it. It's very simple to use. Just reach over there, start scrolling through it. And this thing is super, super easy to use. Pick whatever one you like and go with it. I really like this zoom on this thing because whenever you go to zoom, it doesn't zoom all at once. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. You have 30 clicks before you get to full zoom. So that's pretty cool, man. So you don't lose so much resolution at once. So say if you're pig hunting in a stand over a feeder, and if you're 50 yards from your feeder, I mean, you can fine tune your zoom instead of when you go to zoom, it goes all at once. So this one, you can really fine tune it. But if you are shooting out there at 200 yards and you want a lot of zoom, and you just crank it down and it'll put you out there. But this thing's got a lot of good features.
I mentioned earlier a 243 is an extremely flat caliber. When you hear a shooter use that term flat, they're not referring to the scope differential, as those are two completely separate things altogether, but both affect how your gun performs. All flat really means is a caliber's inherent ability to travel a said distance without much natural drop. And the flatness of a caliber, if you will, is directly related to the bullet's velocity or speed. Just remember in general, the faster the caliber, the flatter the caliber. That's why most predator hunters prefer those fast, flat shooting calibers like a 223, 220 Swift, 22 250, or the tried and true 243, because they just don't drop much till they get way out there because they're so fast. Now where it gets confusing is when you get to the scope differential. But just to better help you understand, and for argument's sake, let's play a game. Let's say in theory, when your bullet leaves the barrel, it would never drop and would travel for infinity in a perfectly straight line. Now we all know that's not the case, but just for this argument, let's all assume it does. Now I want you to imagine your scope sitting some ridiculously high distance above your barrel. I mean stupid high, like let's just say 3 feet. If your scope sat 3 feet above your barrel, how far would a bullet traveling for infinity in a straight line have to climb in elevation to reach its 0 point once it leaves the muzzle? Well, if you guess somewhere close to 3 feet, you'd be right. Now obviously that's an exaggerated example, but it's an easy way to understand what scope differential really is. It has nothing to do with a caliber's flatness or lack thereof. It's all about your sight's height over the bore of your barrel. And the higher the sights, the more important your 0 point becomes out to your caliber's natural fall-off point. And the lower the sights, the more you can really take advantage of a flat caliber like a 243, if you don't want to worry about having to make adjustments in the field from 1 yard out to 200. Just put it on them and pull the trigger. And I do believe Ronnie may have made a new friend with the bolt.
Yeah. God, I cannot believe that we got that done with the moon. That moon is full as it gets. 40 yards. It's a good one. No 300 pounder, but it's a good one. It's an extremely difficult shot at that range.
Was it?
Yeah. I know I hit at least 3 times, or maybe 4 times, because I hit that one twice. And then another one over here. You know, the thing about it is too, that people don't really take into consideration, as soon as you fire that first shot, it's complete chaos. To be honest with you, having an AR, it is an advantage, but at the same time, you're still having to hit a moving target. As long as you can rack that bolt, I mean, you still got the same chances of hitting one. That's a lot of pigs. Kind of like this look on you, Ronnie. It's pretty sexy.
That's what happens when you wear a white shirt on a moonlit night.
I really want to thank all the guys at InfiRay for such great products. Night hunting of just about any sort is a true test of one's skills, but just as much so one's equipment. That's why running reliable optics like the Bolt every time you go out will keep you in the action long enough to cross the finish line and well beyond. So if you're someone who considers yourself a bolt guy and looking for a killer thermal with a traditional feel, before you buy anything else, get your hands on a bolt and see for yourself. For me, I can honestly say I'm truly impressed how fast we fell in love with the scope. And because of it, well, I'm afraid old PB&J may have just become a permanent resident of the retirement closet.